Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Tim sent me a note and said, Steve, here's a story that'll divide your audience. That is, one side will agree with it and one side won't. And it might even be like close to a 50-50 split. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. But here's a story from Fox 32 out of Chicago. Suburban cop who stole a $15 shirt back in 2008 has been decertified by Illinois and can no longer be a police officer. So having stolen the $15 shirt, 15 years ago, is a disqualifying event, and she cannot be a cop anymore. So the question is that appropriate, considering the size of money we're talking about, the amount of money we're talking about at the very beginning, and the length of time that's passed since, and by the way, the youth, the age at which she did that. So Tia Ewing wrote this: a suburban police officer is decertified for a crime she committed 15 years ago. Now she cannot be a police officer in the state of Illinois or anywhere in the country, apparently. Now, she said, I took responsibility for my actions. Earlier this year, she decided to leave the Cicero Police Department to work for Riverside. She was only on the job for 2 months when the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board decertified her for stealing a T-shirt when she was 23 years old. Now she's 38. The crime happened in 2008. You can do the math on that. And the shirt that she stole was under $15, and the charges were later dropped. State rep and the Village of Riverside support the former officer, a state rep does. She's been open about her past, and her boss says that's what made him want to employ her. Yes, she made a mistake in 2008, but what she's done since that date is the more important part. Over the past 15 years, she's worked tirelessly to better herself. She's gone to school and studied criminal justice, says the director of public safety for Riverside. The incident happened because of a $14.99 situation at a J.C. Penney's, I believe, where she received a misdemeanor, says the state rep. Now, the question is, it does say the charges were dropped, so she may have been charged with a misdemeanor. But Cook County State's attorney confirms that she was put on the do not call list. And apparently they're referring to a list of candidates who've applied for jobs as police officers but will not ever get that call. Now, it's after receiving notification from the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board that she had this event in her past. Now, the board issued a statement saying, I can say, pursuant to the Police Training Act and amendments made by the SAFE-T Act, or the SAFE-T Act, we have a continuing duty to ensure all sworn law enforcement officers are free of any disqualifying criminal offenses as provided by statute. So she is no longer working as a police officer, but was reassigned to another job within the Village of Riverside. So apparently they said, well, she cannot be a police officer, but we can find other work for her and her skill set. So that's good. That's the entire story. That's the entire story. So the woman is now 38. 15 years ago, she stole a shirt that was worth $15. Theft is wrong. I agree with you 100% on that. However, the real question is, number one, the charges were later dropped. But number two, you and I both know that there are police officers out there who, once they become cops, do bad things and get to keep their jobs. Because what they did while they were a cop. And we've heard these stories about these police officers who had charge after charge after charge pending, and they're either still on the job or they're suspended with pay, which is not a bad gig if you can get it. Suspended with pay means you go home and collect a paycheck without working for it. And so I am a believer in giving people second chances. And so if I were the almighty, all-knowing, all-powerful entity that was in charge of making this one decision regarding that woman, I think I'd say let her be a cop. That's what I think I would do, okay? And I know somebody says, Steve, she broke the law. $15 shirt, 15 years ago, charges were dropped. The charges were dropped, okay? Now, it might be that her mistake was admitting it happened. Because if the charges were dropped and there was no record of it, they might not have found out if she hadn't told them. But also, I have heard stories about people who were very, very successful in life and later on said, by the way, I'm going to let you know something. I had something happen to me very, very early on, and I made a mistake. And I had a choice. I could have gone this way or gone this way. And I've actually heard people say, I didn't think I could go this way, but someone came along and said, you know something? I'm willing to cut you some slack on that one. Don't do it again. And sometimes that's what it takes. It takes somebody to come along and show a little faith in you and say, look, we're going to let you slide on this one thing. And so that's my number one thought, is that people do make mistakes. And, you know, what if she had been 14 years old at the time instead of 23? Would that have also been a disqualifying event? You know, what if she was 12? And so I think you do have to take those kinds of things into account and go, okay, I understand she was 23 years old. She was an adult. There's no question she's an adult. But it was a shirt valued at under $15. And she has come clean on that, and since then has put in all the work to get the education and the training to become a police officer. And the only disqualifying event is, in fact, that one blemish. And the blemish happened 15 years ago and involved $15. So personally, I think you give people a second chance. But also, you may know this, and whether you like police or don't like them as a general proposition, most people recognize that we actually do need police. We simply want good police, okay? And so the real question then is, if it's hard to hire police officers now, okay, do you do things like this, where it appears that she was qualified, it appears that she's been on the straight and narrow for the last 15 years. Do you really say, yeah, but you got that one thing 15 years ago. We cannot hire you. And so that's one I'm very curious about. I'm not sure, I don't think I agree with that. And so I've known people who've had mistakes in their pasts and have gone and done everything they needed to do, and then acknowledging the mistake in their past, some licensing board or some organization says, you know something, we're going to let you in, but we're going to keep an eye on you. And, you know, you can let that be the final chance, the warning shot, whatever you want to call it, and say, okay, you have to fly really, really straight and level and good, or you will be out of here. So it's an interesting story. But like I said, contrast that with all the things we've heard of police officers doing on the job and how many of them seem to get away with all kinds of stuff because once they're in the job, they're protected by unions and rules and so on. But before you're in, apparently the $15 shirt can disqualify you from a job 15 years later. So I don't know. I have a sneaky feeling it's going to be about 50-50 in the comments on this one. Yes or no? Do you agree with this decision? So let me know below. But Tia Ewing wrote that. Tim sent it to me. And Suburban cop who stole a $15 shirt in 2008, decertified by Illinois, can no longer be a police officer. So there you go. I also got to mention to you a couple days ago, the $100 bill is very, very hard to spot. There's a reason for that. And it ties in with the shirt I'm wearing. I've known a man named John Cedor since I was in sixth grade. We've stayed in touch all these years. And one of the reasons I'm telling you the story is he is the one who told me that I should go to law school. I was on a completely different career path. And he was in Michigan because at that time he was already living in Alaska, because after he graduated law school, he got a job in Alaska and went to Alaska. So I don't see him as often as I'd like to because he lives in Alaska. So one time he's back in Michigan, and this is long before I even finished my undergrad, and I was talking to him, and he goes, Steve, he goes, you should consider going to law school. He goes, you have the temperament for it. You appear to have the thinking skills that are required. And he goes, I just know that from talking to you about different things we've talked about that you would enjoy law school. Have you considered going to law school? And I hadn't. I had never considered it. And he said, you need to look into it. And so because of him telling me that, I looked into it, thought it would be a good idea, and suddenly I'm off a completely different career path, and I owe that all to John. So a couple days ago, John sent me a note and said, hey, Steve, I'm going to be in town. I'm going to swing by and say hi if you're around. I said, great, you do that. And when he stopped by, he told me a funny story about somebody he knows in Alaska who went to Ohio State and had sent him a screen grab of me wearing an Ohio State shirt on camera and said, hey, my YouTube friend, Steve Lehto, is wearing an Ohio State shirt. You know, you can too, because John went to U of M. And John goes, well, how do you know Steve? And the guy goes, oh, I'm joking. I don't actually know him. I just watch his videos, you know. And John's like, but you know Steve Lehto. Because this is another guy in Alaska telling John that he watches me. And John's going, how small can this world be? And John told his friend, he goes, I went to high school, junior high, and 6th grade with Steve Lehto. Like, I've known him since a long time ago. And the guy's like, no way, really? So when John came by, I said, we got to sit you down in the studio and let you sit in my chair so you can send a picture to your friend and go, here I am on the set of Lehto's Law. And so he did that. But when he came by, I told him the story. We were talking about the $100 bill. And he goes, can I hide it once? And I've never had a guest hide the $100 bill before. So I said, sure. First thing he did is he rolled it up. And I go, John, I didn't tell you you could roll up the $100 bill. Because you didn't tell me you couldn't. I said, oh, okay. So he rolled it up and stuck it over here. I put a screen grab of it up at the end of the second video to make sure people saw it. But I've since flattened it out, and I've cleaned up that because I think it's a little unfair to roll it up and make it that hard to find. But he also said, oh, by the way, I got you a shirt, and it's Moose Tooth of Anchorage. And I said, what is Moose Tooth? Because I've heard of Moose Jaw. It's a town in Canada. It's also an outfitter in Birmingham, Michigan. And he goes, oh, no. Moose Tooth is a pizzeria. In Anchorage, they have really, really good pizza. He goes, I got you the shirt. I go, so why is it named that? Is that like one of the random things you can order and get on your pizza? Like I like the pepperoni and anchovy and moose tooth. And he goes, no. He goes, there's mountains near Anchorage, and that's the name of a mountain, Moose Tooth Mountain. I said, oh, okay. So apparently it's very, very good pizza. If you ever go to Anchorage, check them out. But that's the explanation behind the shirt. My good friend John Cedar swung by the studio and sat in my chair, hid my $100 bill. I found it. And gave me the shirt I'm wearing today. So that's the story. Questions or comments, put them below. Those will talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. I haven't slept for 10 days because that would be too long.